Hey everyone, it's Tricia, but you can call me your dirty little whore.
You suck. We wanna talk about sex, but we're not allowed. Well, you may not like me, but you better let.
Hey everyone, it's Tricia and Sara, and today we're gonna get kinky as fuck.
I'm Sara Rosen. I'm a sex therapist and educator. I work at the Long Island Institute of Sex Therapy, as well as That Drawer, which is a sex store run solely by sex therapists. I specialize in working with clients in alternative relationship dynamics. I work with kinks, fetishes, and really help people to normalize and understand their sexualities.
Love it. So I'd love to ask you some questions about like kink, therapy, fetish, whatever.
Yes.
So first question, I feel like a lot of people have this question. I personally always get so confused. What is the difference between kink and fetish?
Okay, so this is controversial and there's a lot of overlap, but simple way to understand it is that, so the definition of a kink is a bend in the norm.
Okay.
So a kink can be a non-normative act that you engage in, and a fetish, I kind of look at it as a non-normative act or behavior, but it's something that you need to get off, or you need it more often than not. Like kink is maybe something that you do for fun, and fetish is something you do because you need. But that's a loose definition, and for some people that really differs.
Doesn't relate. Okay.
And can kinks be fetishes? Yes. Like, can people like foot kink stuff? Yes. And can people have foot fetishes? Yes. So it's a little bit confusing. They're very similar.
Okay.
Or they can be.
Okay, that clears it up. So I've always had that issue of just understanding the both. So what would you say for people who are into small penis humiliation? Is that a kink or is that a fetish?
So it could be either.
It
could be someone that's like,
okay.
I need humiliation to get off, or someone that feels like this is really fun to get off to.
Okay.
Again, that's a controversial definition.
And since you're a sex therapist, how common is that kink or fetish?
Small penis humiliation is so common. And of course you think of like heteronormative men and hypermasculinity, and so you have men who are all these spaces of positions of power, and there's something about just being humiliated that can feel good for a lot of men because, you know, they just have so much privilege and they just need a break from it.
Let's get rid of that immediately.
They just need a break from all that privilege. So,
yeah.
you know.
No, I think that's interesting because, I mean, personally, like, I love, like, if you want to be like, you're a hoe, you're a dirty slut, I'm like, please continue. I love it during sex. But I think that's interesting because I've also had my fair share of men who have asked me to do with, like, humiliation shit like that. And I always find that interesting, and I'm always down.
I know I have some women, you know, being a little heteronormative right now, but I have a lot of women who are like, that's weird. I don't know how I can do that. But I think that it could be so empowering.
It's
like,
empowering. I think
dom position.
Yeah, at first it took me a little bit because I just feel like I'm definitely way more submissive during sex. Like I like if I'm in like a kinky setting, like I like to be more of a sub, but I can definitely now after like experiencing and whatever, I like being that like switch. I think it's fun sometimes to change the dynamic. It was definitely interesting and hard to be mean.
Yeah, because you
like,
probably didn't want to like hurt that person's
I don't want to hurt their feelings. What do I say? What are the boundaries? But
Beautiful.
What do I actually say?
Oh my God, there's so much you can say. Like, oh
it's a learning experience.
Can, like, laugh at them. A lot of people like small penis humiliation. Like, I know this guy where he likes to send like dick pics to this girl that he's seeing, and he likes for her to send them off to her friends, have them comment on how small it is, and then send those screenshots back to him. And that's what he gets off to. That's
interesting. Is there any, like, if you've learned this, like, any, like, reasoning behind that?
So I get asked this question all the time, or what's the reason for different kinks and fetishes? And for me, I don't like to pathologize kinks or fetishes. So,
because it's not a disorder. It's not a disorder. You know, it's nothing like that. It's just, like, sometimes it's just fucking hot.
Yeah. And, like, I love foot fetishes, like, my favorite fetish. And I get asked that specific question, where do foot fetishes come from? And, like, maybe you had the hot babysitter when you were growing up who took off her shoes, or maybe you just like feet.
And I just feel like, there's so many different kinks and fetishes out there that it doesn't make you, like, weird or abnormal. It's just, like, it is what it is. But do you think that these kinks come from something that happened in your childhood, or does it just, like, form? Is, like, a nature-nurture thing, or is it it just...
Sometimes it's something from your childhood, and you know the things that happen in our childhood really impact our sexualities, like for the rest of our lives. And like I'll have a lot of clients who their parents said something that was homophobic. Maybe they were watching a TV show in like the early 2000s, and then they're in the closet for a long time, and there's all this confusion. So like things that happen in our childhood really impact our sexualities, sometimes in a really devastating way, sometimes in a positive way, like if you had the hot babysitter who took off our shoes, cool. Right. So there's a little bit of both, or sometimes you just like something and there's no rhyme or reason why, but it feels good.
Yeah, totally. I feel like I can remember like small experiences when I was younger. I remember one time I was playing with like one of my guy friends when I was like 4, and I remember we were playing like Batman and Robin or something, and I remember he like, this is when I was 4, so I don't know if this is like too fucking crazy to say, but I remember he like tied me up, and like I was like I'm assuming he was playing Batman and I was playing like the bad person, and he tied me up, and I remember being like, this is kind of hot.
You're a little baby
so I'm
kinkster.
Like, baby kinkster, like, am I into shibari? Yes.
Well, I mean, like, and sexuality as a kid, I mean, how many little girls learn about masturbation from, like, water pressure in the shower?
Right,
so,
right.
like, is it wrong or not? It's all relative, and it depends on, like, how those experiences have impacted
and, like, how our parents or whoever, like, talked about it, if those situations arise. I remember being in the bathtub one time, and I remember, like, tickling myself. I remember time because I was, like, laughing. I remember mom being like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, like, this water, like, feels, like, good or something. And I remember her just being like, oh, like, loves it. And, like...
That's so cool.
You know,
so your mom was, like,
my mom's
positive.
very sex positive. Very sex positive.
Awesome.
So I feel like a lot of people would be like... I remember I had a friend in college who, like... My friend would stretch in the shower because she was, like, the water pressure felt good when she was, like... She played, like, softball, whatever. Or something like that. And I remember her mom being like, that's inappropriate. Like, you shouldn't do that. And I'm like, that's so interesting. Because, like, my mom was the opposite effect, just being like, yeah.
What a complicated relationship that girl must have with her body.
Right. It's interesting.
Man, to get shamed, like, as a baby for touching yourself, like, that must
and you don't know. You don't know. You're just like, this feels good to me.
Yeah.
You don't know that it's wrong or it's not even sexual at that point, you know? It's just...
And for parents, like, you can't really get mad at them a lot of times. Like, they don't know how to raise a sex-positive kid. I mean, there are tons of books. You certainly could look into it and have a better understanding of how that works. But, I think the best way to go about that is, like, oh, that feels good, and explain, like, that's great, that's something that you do in private.
Exactly.
Like,
that's all you have to say. Yeah.
But it's not dirty. It's not wrong. It feels good.
Like, you don't have to be like, oh, that's gross. I feel like saying that's
yeah,
gross
or that's
is
bad,
traumatizing.
Or that's bad. Like, think about the relationship that person's going to have with sexuality and their genitals. That's gross.
Yeah,
that's bad. Like, they're
What?
going to come see me.
Yeah, exactly. What made you interested in sex therapy?
Okay, so when I was 18, I started working at this sex store in Midtown Manhattan called Eve's Garden. Maybe we'll go there together one day. That'd be really fun. Okay. And so I was super rebellious. My parents were, like, super conservative. I went to an all-girls Catholic school. I had abstinence-only education.
We are the same, yeah.
So I applied to work at a sex store, and it was this, like, really upscale erotic boutique. And
did you have, like, sex toys, like, growing up, like, that you hid, or?
So, funny story, the first sex toy I ever got was, like, a bullet vibrator from Babeland, and it was, if you voted in 2008?
Obama, baby.
Yeah, of course. And if you voted, if you brought in your card, you got a free vibrator.
That's amazing.
I remember bringing my card.
And you were like,
they weren't checking cards, they were just handing them out, but I was so excited. I made sure when I voted they gave me a card that said I can go to people and get my free bullet. That was my first vibrator. And
amazing.
So then, well, yeah, I guess around the same time I started working at Eve's Garden. And so like I said, at first it was just to be a rebellious teen, but people were coming into the store for really, really important reasons, like women who had been sexually assaulted who were working on being sexual with themselves again, or women who were going through chemo who needed, like, different assistive devices in bed or whatnot, and it just, like, it was just a calling. It was like, okay, this is what I was meant to do. Like, this just feels like...
Are you into astrology at all?
I'm not. My sister is. My sister.
Do you know
really
your
is.
Do you know your North Node sign?
I'm not sure, but my sister probably does, and I can get back to you on that.
Okay, because that's a very
I think-
Scorpio North Node thing, and I'm a Scorpio North Node, and I just feel like that would be.
You know, I'm a Capricorn, January 7th.
We love Capricorns. I
Great.
get along with Capricorns. Like,
Here I am.
yeah, okay, that makes so
Here
much
I
sense.
am.
That makes so much sense.
So, I decided when I started working there, and I had a great mentor, the person who owned the store, who was super sex positive, super feminist. I decided, okay, I need to be a sex therapist. This is what I was meant to do. This is what I was put on this earth for.
So this was when you were in high school that you were working here, or in college?
My first year of college.
Okay.
So it was funny because I was working at as a Christmas elf and also at a sex store.
So cute.
It's a great job.
Best
They're
of both worlds.
Seriously,
you know?
they're both great jobs.
Yeah.
So then I went to University of Delaware for gender and human sexuality, which is where I met my husband. I was actually a mascot there. He was a cheerleader. Beautiful story.
It's really
cute. It was super cute. And then I went to Widener University in Pennsylvania, where I got my master's in social work for my clinical degree, and then I got my master's in human sexuality for my specialization. And now
Cool.
I'm working towards my ASEX certification.
Yeah.
To be a certified sex therapist. I'm done with all my hours. I'm just filling out the application.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So what do most of your clients come in for? Like what are most of the issues?
Mm-hmm. So my specific specialty within the practice is kinks, fetishes, alternative relationship dynamics. So I have people who are interested in opening their relationship. A lot of people who are into cuckolding, a lot of people who are really confused or even upset about their fetishes or kinks.
Yeah.
Let's see. I just see so many kinky people. I do work with a lot of erectile dysfunction, but like I said earlier, we call it erectile disappointment right now, coined by Joe Court. I love that phrase.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
way more sex positive.
It is. And erectile disappointment is so common. It's actually one of my favorite things to work
I
with.
dated someone with that, and he just got out of a relationship, and so did I. So it was a very good mutual situation, and the only way he could come if I called him daddy.
And it's so funny because that's not the first time I've heard that. Like, I had a friend who was dating this guy, and she was like, he only comes when I call him daddy. I'm like, then keep calling him daddy. That sounds great. That sounds
Why
great.
not? I wasn't mad about it, you know?
Yeah. And that goes into other power dynamics that we can talk about. It's like why that's a trigger word for so many men, but it really, really is.
Right.
But in terms of that kink, I mean, that's like pretty common. But okay, so he had trouble with erections, and now I like to look at erectile disappointment as an opportunity to like get really kinky, because if we take away, like, we're talking, heteronormative, penis, vagina, sex, like, we can try new things. We can find other erotic areas of the body. And I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah.
So much of therapy so we use a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's, not necessarily changing your situation, but changing the way that you relate to your situation. So with erectile disappointment, it's a lot about, well, this gives us a great opportunity to get really kinky. Let's find out, like, all the other ways we can get off, all the other parts of our bodies that feel good. And it's such a mindset of, once someone loses an erection, it can feel really devastating for them. Their partner can really put them down for it, can take it personally. But, like, insulting someone or demeaning someone for losing an erection is a good way to make sure, like, they'll never get an erection with you.
Yeah.
But, like, saying, oh, no, that's totally cool. Like, you can go down on me. Like, we can do this.
Yeah, there's so many things you can do. Let's watch porn together. We can masturbate at the same time.
Oh, my God,
you know what I
we
mean?
can masturbate together. You can watch me masturbate.
To me, that's one of the mutual masturbation is one of the hottest things.
I love mutual masturbation.
So
love
hot.
it. I love it.
So much fun.
And I do work with couples who, like, and some people don't talk about masturbation, and they have great sex, and that's just the way their relationship functions. Mm-hmm. And so it's not always a bad thing, but I have some couples where, like, especially guys, they can only masturbate when their wives are not home or their partners are not home, and it's just like, I don't want them to walk in on me doing that.
I think I've also asked a lot of straight men this question, and they've been like, I don't want my partner to know I watch porn. I don't want them to know I masturbate. I don't want them to see me doing it. I want them to know what I masturbate to. And I'm always like, I mean, I'm not a sex therapist. I'm just like, am interested in this world. That I'm like, I just think that it would make the relationship stronger. Like, personally, I think it's hot. Like, I'm like, I want to know what gets you off. I think that's hot. Like, even if it's something that's not like me, I'm like, cool. Like, I think it's probably hot. Like, why not?
Oh my god, I love mutual masturbation, and I think it's such a great way to find out what your partner likes, especially for vulva owners. Like, because vulvas, I think, are they're
a little bit more tricky.
Oh, they're more complicated penises. They're beautiful. They're perfect, but there are just so many different ways that a vulva can experience pleasure. So like to see how someone does that for themselves, I think is like really, really empowering and beautiful and sexy. But yeah, the porn thing is super complicated. I do work with a lot of guys who are like, my partner would be really jealous if they saw.
And I'm like, but are you sure? Have you talked to them about it? Because I think it's also a huge thing of
communication.
That's
a good question. Oh my god, that's a very good question. Have you talked to them about it?
They might not care.
They might be into it.
I remember dating someone a few years ago, and they did this like VR porn, which I'm like, cool. That sounds cool. VR like, porn. and he was like, and I was like kind of drunk, and he was like, I just want to like apologize, like. I like watched porn, and it was like VR porn, and like it was so realistic, and like I'm sorry. And I remember being like,
you're like, please don't look at my computer because you don't need to know the film things I've been watching.
Exactly. And I was like I don't care. And there was a part of me that was like, should I be mad? Like, should I be upset about this? Because I wasn't. Because I wasn't really like I was obviously always into like sexuality and stuff, but I didn't know like all the dynamics and blah blah blah. Yeah. So I was like, should I be mad at this? And like I was like, no, like it's okay. But in my head I was like, should I be upset with him? Like, I don't know. I didn't really care. And it didn't bother me because I'm like, I don't think it should. Like, fantasies are different than reality naturally, and that's fine. What? I don't think you can have that your one partner base your entire like sexual and like all the like, you can't have that one person do everything for you. One
person cannot meet 100% of your needs emotionally, sexually. They just can't. You can be the best partner in the world, and you just can't meet 100% of another person's needs. And that's like really complicated because I do work with people who they are uncomfortable with their partners watching porn. And for me, I'm like, I love sex workers. I love porn. And it's tough to say that, like, well, you're cheating if you watch porn person. I'm like, no, it gives you ideas, it helps you get off. Yeah.
And I guess in that case, do you ever recommend, be like, why don't you watch it together and see what they watch? You know what I mean?
Watching porn together is so fun. And I'll tell you my favorite porn star who I got to interview, which I'm like so
let's
happy,
hear it.
Ella Darling, and she's actually the first porn star to make VR porn.
So cool.
I'm like,
yeah, so cool.
And she was a librarian. And
it sounds like the ultimate like kinky ass shit, like librarian turns porn star.
I freaking love her, and she has a TED Talk about like owning her own company, and she's like such a boss. So that's how I introduce a lot of women to porn. I say, watch Ella Darling's TED Talk. Like, you can watch porn of someone who is like, because that's the concern. Well, what if they're not consenting to it? I'm like, oh no, here's a lot of people who are very much consenting and very powerful, and very consensually doing this work.
But I think there's a huge stigma about like women or necessarily like people with vulvas who want to own their sexuality and like want to like talk or do porn or just like overly sexual. I personally have felt that growing up, that like I've been like very sexual my entire life.
Same.
And like I always felt like I've definitely been slut shamed for it and all this stuff. And like I just feel like there's such an issue, but I feel like the more that we talk about it and stuff like this, the less that there's I just feel like other people will realize that like, wait, women like sex as much as men do. Like,
oh my God.
We're also slutty. Like, we're also hoes. We love it. Like,
it's so funny. I like at this point in my life, like to me, slut is such like a positive term.
Right.
It's like an empowering
You posted
term.
that thing on Instagram, and I was like, I mean, yeah.
I love sluts. I've always called myself a slut.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. I talked to my therapist about this. I'm like, oh no, I'm a total slut. And he was like, don't say that about yourself. I'm like, no. It's like a.
And you're like, honey, let me go in on the lesson right now.
All right, let me explain something. Like, no, it's like somebody who's very empowered and understanding their sexuality.
It's empowering. Yeah, I feel like people think you have to go to sex therapy if you have issues within your relationship. I personally, I've never gone, but I think that it is definitely important to go if there's no issues. Is it preventative? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, so sex therapy, I mean, my personal opinion, everyone should go, because who has like a super informative understanding of sexuality from like just growing up? Usually we learn from porn, we learn from our experiences. Fine, but so let's talk about couples therapy first. And couples therapy has such a bad rap. People cannot let anyone know that they're in couples therapy. And I will say that a lot of the time that couples therapy doesn't work, it's because people waited way too long to go.
The relationship was dead, and they were like, let's do it, let's save it.
People are way past their expiration date, and then they go to couples therapy. And it has this like really bad rap, but you should start going to couples therapy if a problem arises and you're like, oh, this has happened a few times. Let's go to couples therapy before it escalates, before this becomes an issue that like could end our relationship. So I do wish that more people saw couples therapy and sex therapy as preventive, but people don't see it that way. Not yet. Yeah. And going to couples therapy shows that you really care about your relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that couples who are struggling who don't go to couples therapy, I'm like, oh, those are people who, they're going to struggle more. They're going to struggle so much more.
Right. What about singles? Do you think that, like, single people who don't really have super, like, sexuality, like, trauma or anything like that, should they still be?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have, let's see, women who are trying to get a better understanding of their anatomy and orgasms, and men who are learning how to date. People all along the gender spectrum. I work on Long Island, which is pretty conservative, so that's not being super heteronormative. But
that's majority of
that
your
is a lot of what I
clients,
see. I do see more conservative people because of where I'm at,
which I think is great, because I feel like, I mean, everyone needs these therapists and like whatever, but I think it's important that like conservative people, I feel like, really need talks about sexuality and like consent and all this stuff.
It's really cool that LIST, Long Island Institute of Sex Therapy, has become, I feel like it's a really safe space for conservative people. I mean, no matter where you go to therapy, like no therapist is trying to break HIPAA. Like, no, we like having our license.
Yeah, you're like, don't worry, we're not gonna fuck this up for you. Like,
people do say this to me, like, please, no one can know about this. I'm like, do you know how much I paid for my licensure?
Don't worry, I won't.
But also, like, I think about it even at home, like, you know, when I'm seeing my therapist, I wouldn't want them to, like, have other people in their house here. So, like, even doing therapy from home, if my husband happens to be home, I have a ton of sound machines going. He's got his headphones on. So, very, very respectful of people's privacy, as I would want my providers to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Because it's so intimate, like sexuality. I feel like that's a lot of people's identity is sexuality.
Yeah, it's such a difficult thing to talk about. And even, like, making the call to come see a sex therapist is something that people sit on for years. Years, sending that email, making that call. And, you know, something that I want more people to understand is that, like, if you're calling a sex therapist, we have heard everything. Like, you're not going to say anything that is weird or that's going to make us uncomfortable.
Honestly, as an esthetician, I feel like people, like, when I, like, massage people, they're going to be like, oh, like, my feet are gross, like, blah, 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 my feet are gross, or I have a lot of acne, or blah, blah, blah. I'm like, trust me.
You're like, I've touched a lot of faces. Like,
I've seen it all.
I've touched the acne before. Yeah.
I've seen it all. Don't you fucking worry. I feel like it's the same thing. It's like, trust me.
It is so the same thing. It is so similar. I'm like, you're not going to make me uncomfortable as long as it's not, like, directed at me. Like, you're not going to make me uncomfortable. And for me, you know, there's, like, different types of therapists. Some people are more clinical, and that's what some people need. And, like, then you have me, who's, like, I use a lot of humor in my sessions, and, like...
Which I think most people probably really appreciate.
Well, you know, people come in, they're like, what words can I use? I'm like, you can say whatever you want. You can use the word cock, you can use the word pussy. You're not going to make me uncomfortable, you know?
Right. I feel like you're probably an amazing therapist.
I love what I do. I absolutely love what I do, and I think that
it will come through. Yeah, that will show through.
That I genuinely care about them.
Yeah.
You suck. We wanna talk about sex, but we're not allowed.
We're gonna play a fun little game of true and false. So first question is it still feminist to be submissive?
True.
I'll drink to that.
Let's
Let's fucking chug.
Because as a submissive, you decide in the different ways that you want to relinquish power.
Exactly.
Like, it's really empowering to be a sub.
I think I felt that way for so long of being like, oh, I'm not a feminist because I want you to call me a dirty little slut and fucking spit on my face.
But feminism is all about doing what feels good for you.
It's what for you. So
if you're like being a sub feels really hot, but like I'm not going to do it because it's not feminist, then like you're not being a feminist, right?
Exactly. We're in postmodern feminism, so
we out here.
True or false? There are apps for kinks.
So yes, there are, and I've tried many of them, and let me say, and I am not paid to say this, and maybe they will pay me to say this, but Feeld, me too, Feeld, that has been by far my favorite app, the most user-friendly. You meet, like, regular people, because a lot of them, like, the refund, or a lot of them are, like, you find a lot of scams.
Yeah.
So sad that people are...
I was on Feeld for a while, and Feeld is lit.
Feeld is so good. Feeld is so good.
Feeld is lit.
Yeah,
honestly,
I have not found. I mean, like Tinder is good. You can put like, but in my opinion, Feeld is the best.
Because Feeld is like specific for kinks. Like it was a nice place to meet people who are like minded.
Mm-hmm. And it's nice to have friends in the community.
It's nice to have friends in the community because also, especially as a herpes positive person, I think it was really nice that I had it on my profile and people were like very okay with it.
Hell yeah, and that's something like UCM provides and you don't think anything of it, you know? We're on like more vanilla dating apps, people would be like,
right, like if I put it on Hinge or Bumble, they may be like a little bit like questionable, but I think on Feeld, people are a little bit more open about it. So honestly, I feel like we should just cheers to Feeld.
I'm a fan of Feeld.
We love
Feeld,
it.
if you want to sponsor us,
do whatever shot glass you want. We both got tequila in the same glass. We love this pink sparkly glass and this one that says bitch. I'm gonna chase it with this drink.
Same.
You suck. We wanna talk about sex, but we're not allowed.
So make sure you guys tune in next time because we're gonna have some more equally as slutty shit going on. So just like stay tuned.
You suck. We wanna talk about sex, but we're not allowed. Well, you may not like me, but you better lay
How's that, bitch?